Hey, everybody. It is Thursday, so it is our Thursday live coaching calls. And if this is your first time tuning in, let me just tell you the deal. Every Thursday at this time, noon Central Time, myself and sometimes some of the other coaches here at Grief Guru hop on for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, however long we have to chat, to just make time and space of you. If you have questions, if you're struggling or stuck in your grief recovery and you just need some tips, some tools, or some encouragement to keep going, this is what we have set this time aside for. So today you have just me. And as I was thinking about what to talk about, I just wanted to share an insight that came out of one of our coaching sessions this week with a group of clients. And also, I wanted to make room if there is a specific to see covered during one of these Thursday sessions. Drop a comment below, send us an email, make a comment on our Facebook page, and this time is for you. So we would love to talk about the things that are important to you, the challenges that you're having, and answer any questions that you might have. So if you're here, I see a couple people here, drop a comment, say hello. But if at any time during this next half hour or so you or comment or something you would like me to talk about, I'm here to do just that. But until or unless there are comments or questions today, I wanted to talk about how we can stay emotionally connected to the people that we've lost in a positive and healthy way. Because some of the time when people are stuck in their grief recovery, it's because they only feel connected to their loved one when they're sad, when they're grieving, when they're remembering, when they're experiencing the sorrow and the sadness and missing their person or remembering the details of their passing. It's really emotional and it's really strong. And for a lot of people, that's the only way that they feel connected to the person that they lost, is through grieving and sadness and sorrow. So what I would entertain today and introduce you to is the concepts and the different ways that you stay emotionally connected to your loved one in a healthy and positive way. Oh, I see. Hey, Kelly. Hi. So let's talk about it. A couple of ways that you can stay connected to the person that you lost is by continuing to let them know about what's going on in your life. I know that people feel crazy talking to dead people. And we're not talking about the sixth sense, and we're not talking about psychics and mediums and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about any of that. What I'm talking about, though, is if you have something, someone passed away and something happens in your day or in your life and you want to share it with them, there's absolutely no reason why you can't share it with them. You can go for a walk and talk to your loved one. Let them know about what's going on in your life. Let them know that you miss them. Let them know, that you wish they were here to see XYZ, and just share. You can continue to share your life with them. There's no reason why you can't do that just because they're not physically here. And that can be a really positive, be a sad, sorrowful thing. So that is one way that you can stay emotionally connected to your loved one in a healthy way. Another way is incorporating them into your traditions, into your holidays. This is part of what I love helping people to do, is to brainstorm and think of creative, meaningful ways to include your loved ones in your life going forward. So that may be, at holiday events, in remembrance of the person that's not there. Some people light a candle, some people leave a chair out at the dinner table and use that time to share stories about their loved one that isn't there. There's so many ways that you can do this, and there's so many ways that are filled with joy and laughter and good times. Grieving and grief doesn't have to be all sad and sorrowful. I think this is part of the reason why people say I'll be grieving forever, because what they mean to say is that they'll be missing their loved one forever. They're not coming back. They're not here physically. And so, in a certain extent, you'll always be thinking about them. You'll always recognize that they aren't there at certain events, but that doesn't mean that you can't include them and involve them and that it has to be sad or sorrowful. I just had this past weekend, I went to a graduation party of some neighbors that, my kids and I grew up with. This neighborhood kids and hear about their lives. And it it definitely was an emotional day for me, knowing that Quentin wasn't there, and all these kids are taking these big life steps that he didn't get to take. So it was emotional, but it didn't have to be. It didn't have to ruin my day. It didn't have to be sad. That's the part of grief and grieving that goes on. And we talked about Quentin. We shared memories of him running around the neighborhood with the other kids, and he was there with us in spirit and in memory. So that's another way that you can stay connected in a positive way. Again, if you're just jumping on, if you are dealing with grief and going through grief recovery and you have a question, or you're stuck, or you have a comment, or if what I'm saying makes no sense, or if it makes perfect sense, drop a comment below. This time is intended, as much as we can through Facebook and YouTube and live streaming, to be a conversation and an interaction. So I love hearing from you. I'd be happy to chat about whatever you want to chat about. But here was kind of the aha moment for me that I really wanted to share with you. Grief changes all of us, and it changes us internally and personally. It changes our perspective. It changes the way we look at life. It changes the way we live life. It changes our relationships. It changes everything. And one of the things you can do is to recognize the way that it's changed you in a positive way. There are certainly negative changes, but grief also can change you in a positive way. And here's the connection I'd like you to make. If you can identify the ways that you've been changed for the better because of going through this loss. I was working with someone the other day that said, I used to be a perfectionist, and I realize now that it's such a waste of time trying to be a perfectionist. It's such just like a futile exercise to embrace perfectionism. That was one of the ways that she was changed through the loss of her loved one. And the idea I gave to her, and what I'd like to give to you, is that now for the rest of her life, whenever she catches herself not succumbing to perfectionism, whenever she finds that she is freed from perfectionism, that is a gift that she experienced through the loss of her loved one. And she can thank her loved one for that, and she can remember them and smile. Like, what a gift that is. If you can live the rest of your life without trying to be perfect anymore, and to be freed from perfectionism, and you understand that the reason you had this clarity, the reason you had this shift in perspective, is because you went through a really hard loss. You can connect that dot back to the person that you lost. And every time you walk in that freedom, every time you recognize and remember that you're not walking in perfectionism anymore, that is, you have your loved one to thank for that, and let it bring a smile to your face, and literally thank them. That is a positive emotional connection that you can build. And for the rest of your life, you can make that connection and remember them every time that you're not walking in perfectionism. And so that is what it looks like. That's what it looks like to move forward and to live in a way that honors and remembers your loved one, that keeps you connected to them, but in a way that isn't devastating, in a way that isn't unhealthy, and in a way that isn't hindering you from living your very best life. And I personally think that the best thing we can do to honor the ones we've lost is to make the most of the time that we have left, and make the most of the time in terms of accomplishment and making an impact, but also in terms of enjoying our life and appreciating our life and appreciating their place and role in our life. I think that is the highest honor that you can pay anyone that has been a part of your life and that you've loved and has passed away. And I know that all of this is easier said than done. I know that all of this just doesn't happen organically or naturally. It takes a shift in perspective, it takes the right mindset, and then it takes practice. It just takes, honestly, remembering that this is the way you're choosing to live life going forward. And it takes practicing it and being mindful of it. And that's why we have this community and these calls, so that you can be surrounded by people who are doing the same thing, who are learning how to do the same thing. Okay, so let's see. I have a comment here, so we're going to ask. In some ways, I feel that my faith has been strengthened, but at the same time, I feel like I loved my wife so much that I feel lost. Maybe I depended too much on her. I think that sounds absolutely appropriate. That when you have intimacy, the fact that you feel lost without her shows how much you loved her. And husband and wife do become one flesh, and they build a life together, and they do things together. So I think it would be strange if you didn't feel a little lost. But now, knowing that she's not here, to lean on your faith and depend on your faith, and to learn how to live a life without her here physically, that can be just as full and just as content and just as rewarding and just as satisfying. I'm such a believer that life is made up of seasons. And one of the keys or tricks to finding contentment is to recognizing what season you're in and not trying to rush ahead to the season that's coming down the road, and also not longing for the season that was behind you, but recognizing and fully embracing the season that you're in. So the season when your wife was here was completely natural for you to be, intertwine your life with her and your heart, and to depend on her emotionally, because she was your wife. That was part of what she was there to do. But just recognizing that now you're in a different season. And so now you need to learn how to live and navigate your life and find peace and joy and contentment in this season. And I personally wouldn't spend too much time worrying about what you did right or wrong in the previous season. Whether you depended on her too much when she was here or not is somewhat irrelevant, because now you're in a different season. So the key is embracing this season, being thankful for previous seasons that you've had, but understanding and recognizing the season you're in now, and being thankful for this season, and learning how to make the most out of this current season. I hope that was helpful for you. Anyone else that's watching that has a comment or a question that they would like us to discuss? Another thing that came up this week that I was just going to talk about, I'm not sure if there are parents here who've lost kids, but can we just talk about that? Parents love to talk about their kids. It's just something that we love to do. Whether they're alive or dead, we want to talk about our kids. And so I just want, if you're a parent and you've lost a child, don't feel weird about talking about your kid. It's totally natural. It's totally normal. And I don't think it's unhealthy or keeping you stuck in grief to want to talk about your kid. The key is to find people that are good with that. A lot of people get, oh, you're welcome. A lot of people get weirded out by, people just in general are uncomfortable with death and loss and grief. It just makes pretty much everyone uncomfortable, except for those of us that are walking through it and are familiar with it. But it's up to us to educate people about, teach them how to talk about it in a way that isn't scary or weird or taboo or whatever, and it's really important for us, regardless of what that looks like, to find people that we can have the conversations we need to have with. Because I say all the time, trauma is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. So if part of your healing journey and your emotional health going forward involves talking about your loved one, whether it was your spouse or your child, if that's something you want and need to do, you need to find the places and people that are going to allow you to do that. And I do want to say caveat though, and this is largely why support groups are helpful, because it's a safe place that you can go and talk about your loved one, and there's always people there to listen. And I love that. The problem sometimes with support groups is there's not structure or a path sometimes on how to move forward. And if all we're doing is sharing, heavy, sad stuff, it can keep us stuck. So what I'm talking about is positive people that are going to be there to listen when you want to share a story or a memory or a struggle or just a sad day. Finding those places and those people is a really, really important part, not only of your grief recovery, but of your life going forward beyond grief recovery. Because there is, I believe, a season of recovery where you're really more intensely focused on recovery and mourning and going through the loss. But then beyond that, you still are going to want to talk about them. Like when I went to that graduation party this weekend, it was important that the people around me knew Quentin and loved Quentin, and we could share memories and stories, and they were there for it. It was an important part of my day that day. So I see, excuse me, a couple new people hopped on. If anybody has a comment or question in terms of their grief recovery that they would like tackled, this is absolutely what I am here to do. I did want to mention too, we're going to be doing a specific event for parents who've lost kids to fentanyl. The opioid epidemic and fentanyl overdoses continue to ravage our country, and more parents, there are parents today that are going to find out that their child died of a fentanyl overdose. It's a tragic epidemic, and so we're going to be doing a special teaching and webinar specifically for parents who've lost kids to overdose or murder. There are fentanyl murders happening as well, so look for that in the end of July. We're going to be hosting that event. And we are excited and thrilled for our Mom's Grief Retreat, which is happening next week. So that's going to be a good time as well. But for the few of you that are tuning in, that are here right now, say hello in the comments, drop a question below, and we will be happy to chat about it. But what we are covering today in terms of a teaching lesson is how to stay emotionally connected to your loved one in a positive way. I know I've spoken about, and I show them all the time, I have these Nike slides that were Quentin's, my son's slides, and I wear them nearly every day. And that's not like a huge emotional thing, but it's just another thing that I do that keeps me connected to him in a positive way. We also kind of have an inside joke in our family that he was driving a gray Kia Soul when he passed away. And so now whenever we see any of us, whenever we see a gray Kia Soul on the road, that's always our little sign that Quentin's around, or it reminds us of him, and we smile. And I think I scare people because when I see him on the road, I wave or I give him like a peace sign. And I think they think that I know them. But for me, that's just my way to acknowledge Q and to acknowledge that he's in my day. So for those of you that are tuning in, like what are some ways that you stay connected to your loved one? What are the little things that you do, or the little signs from them, or signs from heaven, however you want to call it? What are the things that you see that remind you of your loved one? And or do you talk to them? Do you talk to them throughout the day? Do you talk out loud? Do you talk to them in your mind? Do you journal to them? I know of people who have, dedicated journals where they will talk to their loved one. That's a great idea. Another idea that I thought was neat, I didn't try it, but somebody put a jar. They had just this big empty jar with little slips of paper and a pen next to it. And so whenever they thought of something that they wanted to share with their loved one, they would just jot it down on that little slip of paper and put it in the jar. And for them, like the visual cue of the jar being filled with these little thoughts and little nuggets that they wanted to share with them, and they did share with them, is just a visual reminder that they're still, staying connected to them and keeping them involved in their day-to-day life and letting them know what's going on in their life. So these are all ways that you can stay connected to your loved one emotionally in a positive way. Another thing is their birthdays. We talked about holidays and anniversaries, but there's still reason to celebrate the person's birthday. Just because their physical age is not accruing, they're not getting years older, you can still remember and celebrate the day that they were born. That's always a reason for celebration. And just to take that time, either by yourself or with other family members, to remember and reflect and share memories and laugh and do all that kind of stuff. All of these things are really healing for your heart and really healthy and really positive. All right, the folks that are jumping in, we're at 12:19. Anyone else? Is this resonating with you? Are you, what are the things that you do, or what are the struggles that you're having? We are here to talk about it. Also, what other topics should we be covering in this time together? You've seen a few of the coaches here from Grief Guru that have hopped on. We have a handful of other coaches that have yet to come on yet, but I look forward to you meeting each and every one of them and hearing their personal grief recovery story and sharing sharing their story with you and their wisdom and insight. So we have Angela Hayes from London. Awesome. She lost her dad 6 months ago today. Oh, wow. I'm so sorry, Angela, for your loss. And I'm really glad that the timeline videos are helpful. And yeah, there's this whole mindset out there that says there's no timeline for grief. Grief never ends. You just learn to live with it. And it's really, really important that you're careful about what you come into agreement with. Because if you believe that you'll be grieving and sad forever, you will be grieving and sad forever. But if you believe and embrace that you can process the loss, you can recover from the grief, you can mourn the loss and actually recover, and then you seek out information and help in order to do that, you can do that. That is what we're here to be examples of and to help you to get there. And so I love that you watched those videos and that they were helpful for you. I love that, Angela. And again, I'm so sorry for the loss of your dad. And kind of the 6-month mark for us is really when we see people turning the corner from the heavy sorrow and kind of the debilitating sorrow where you can't really focus on anything. Kind of 6 months is usually when we say folks are ready to work with us, because our program is pretty hands-on and somewhat intense, and it's very action oriented. And so the first 6 months we recognize everybody, you're just trying to figure out how to live, really, kind of the first 3 to 6 months. And it varies from person to person, but the physical demands of grief and not being able to sleep and lack of concentration, all that stuff is worse in the first 6 months. So you are at a really great spot cognitively and probably emotionally and physically to actually tackle it and work through it and really get back to living a life that you love. So I'm so glad you're here today, Angela. And we're here every Thursday. Okay, and so let's see. There's another comment that says, the red-headed finches, my wife fed the birds in the backyard and always liked when they stopped by. So I continue to feed them to honor her whenever I see one and say hi. That's awesome. And so isn't that a positive, sweet thing? Like, that doesn't have to be a sad thing. And so now you have something that's pretty much, I don't know how often they're around, but now you have something kind of worked into your daily routine that you can do something that your wife loved. And, she's probably appreciating that you're doing that. If that was something that she did in her life and you're carrying on that tradition for her, she probably loves that. And I love that you're doing that. And yeah, that's a sign between you and her. And isn't that what relationship and intimacy is? These little things that we have with our loved one, these little inside jokes, the habits, the patterns, the things that we know about one another, that's what makes a relationship. And so absolutely, keeping some of those things alive is a great way to stay emotionally connected. Let's see. And Angela says the grief has softened and is not as debilitating and overwhelming at 6 months. Yeah, for sure. So, Angela, that tells me that you are taking some of the right steps and doing the right work, because for some people do just really get stuck in the initial kind of trauma, shock, debilitating phase. And it breaks my heart. I've talked to and worked with people that stayed in that condition, for a year or more. So the fact that it's softening and not as overwhelming tells me that you're taking some of the right steps. You probably have some good, community and support around you. And as you said, by seeking out videos and information, you're seeking out the tools that are helpful for you, which is the name of the game. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm glad to hear that it's lessening. And I just hope and pray that your healing is accelerated and that another 6 months from now, it'll be unrecognizable, that you will be walking in a way that I'm hoping and believing that you will be walking in a way that you can't even envision or imagine right now, that 6 months rather from now, you'll be in a totally different place. And I hope and pray that you find a way to live your life that honors your dad and involves your dad. And, because he was a huge part of, creating you to begin with, and then your life up until now. And so it really, honestly, and I don't want to minimize, it really is beautiful when you think about it. It really is beautiful to be able to live our lives in such a way that honors and remembers the people that helped us to get here, and I don't know, for me, that's the best thing we can do to honor the ones that have gone before us and the ones that we've lost. So thanks for tuning in today, Angela. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for, I think I know who this, I think it's Mike, that's, because we've spoken before, Mike, and I remember about the birds that your wife used to feed. And so I love that you do that. I love that keeps you connected to her. Okay, Angela has another comment. From your experience, would you say that there is a timeline to when the grief pain ends? Obviously, we'll miss them forever, but not the pain and the empty feeling. That's a great question, Angela. And I will say it's different for every person. And I personally believe in what my experience is that is directly proportionate to your actions and how much you work at it or how little you work at it. The problem is a lot of people just are so passive with their grief recovery. They just kind of wait for it to get better. And so let's equate it to if you were sick. If you're sick and you just wait for it to get better, it may get better over time or it may not, But if you take intentional actions, if you go see a doctor, if you get help, if you take medicine, if you rest when you need and then get up and when you start feeling a little bit better, all of those things are going to help you to recover faster. And it's the same kind of thing. And that's what we work with people to do, is to help them design the recovery plan that works for them and to teach them those little things that they can do to recover sooner, to accelerate the recovery. That's why we call our program Grief Relief Accelerator, because we're here to relieve the grief and we want to do it in as fast time as possible. There's no such thing as shortcuts, but you can have an acceleration in your healing. There are things you need to do and time that needs to go by, but based on what you do, you can actually accelerate the healing process. And that's what we're here to tell people. So for example, Angela, when I lost my mom, because I didn't get the help or know the right things to do, it was really like 9-10 months, longer than that, because it was 9 months when I started to discover the right things to do. And then probably a couple more months after that, when I started feeling better, when I started applying them and feeling better. But with my son, because I knew the right things to do and I started doing them right away, I really got to say, within 3 to 6 months. And it's crazy. It's crazy to me because, most people prepare to lose their parents and everybody says, losing a child is the hardest thing and all that kind of stuff. And I love my son and losing him was excruciating, but my recovery was so much faster. And that's why I do what I do, because I was amazed. I was astounded that by doing the things that I learned when I lost my mom and when I studied all this stuff, I started applying them right away, right after he passed away. And I was able to move through, and that the heavy pain and the empty feeling went away a lot faster. And so I don't know if that answers your question, probably in a roundabout way. But absolutely, I'm here to say too that the pain and the empty feeling, like I just spoke about. Oh, thanks, Angela. I just spoke about, going to a graduation party this last weekend, and I was emotional about it. But even that, I wasn't sad. I wouldn't say. I was just emotional because it reminded me so much of his upbringing, and we lived in this neighborhood for 10 years. And so to see all my neighbors and all the kids, and I think it would have been emotional even if he was there, because, right, I was reconnecting with people that were so close to us for so long. But I thought of him a lot, and I thought of the fact that he wasn't there, and that, other kids are taking life steps that he'll never get to take. So he was missed at that party, but I wouldn't say it was like a pain or an empty feeling. Now, I'm coming up on 4 years. He passed away July 8th of 2018. So I'm quite a bit further down the road in terms of time. But I will tell you that, the pain and empty feeling part of it went away a lot sooner. So I don't like to have prescriptive timelines for people because it is an individualized journey. And some people, just like with surgery or physical injuries, some people recover faster than others. And so you're not like good or bad or wrong or right. It's just about how fast can you recover and what are the things that you can do in order to accelerate your recovery. That's your recovery. Because we don't, if it takes someone 6 weeks to recover from surgery and a different person 6 months to recover from surgery, that's just their own healing clock in their body, right? And one's not good or bad or better or worse. But as the doctor would want to do everything they can to help the 6-month person recover as soon as they can. And that's kind of our mind. It's going to take you as long as it's going to take you. But the question is, what are the things you can do? What are the tools you can implement? And what is the support you need in order to do it as fast as you can? Because grieving and grief sucks. It's hard. It's easily the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with or go through. And I think with that. And so who wants to hang out longer than necessary? Who wants to be a slow learner when it comes to grief and grieving? And this is why I'm so passionate, because there's a whole school of thought that tries to just embrace it as this lifelong process and this really kind of unending, slow, painful thing. And I'm just like, you can embrace that school of thought if you want. Who would want to do that? I'm the type of person that I'm just like, okay, this sucks. How do I get from A to B in as shortest time as possible? That's the way that I'm wired. That's what I was looking for in my grief recovery and what I didn't find. And so that's why we created, that's why I created this program and this company, is that those of us that are like me, that are out here, that know we got to get through this, and we know it's not going to be instant, and it's going to take some work, but we want to know, okay, what do I need to do to get through this in the shortest amount of time possible? And that doesn't mean that we're skimming over it, or that we didn't love the person that we lost, or that the pain isn't deep or meaningful, or that the process isn't hard. All those things are true, but we just don't want to spend forever doing it. That's the point. So anyways, Angela, thanks so much for your comments today. It's been lovely chatting with you. I hope you, I see that you're watching on YouTube. I would encourage you to connect with us on Facebook in our free Facebook group, the Grief Relief group on Facebook, where we just have more teaching and encouragement and nuggets for those of us that are walking through grief and grief recovery. So all right, kids, we are past 12:30, so I am going to dip out today. But please do let me know if there are other topics you would like to see covered here. And thanks for showing up. Hope you guys have an amazing day.